TNA Wrestling crossed the line again with another action-packed episode of Impact Wrestling as we are getting closer to the first TNA pay-per-view of the year, Genesis, in a few weeks' time. Also, we're getting closer to the first live Impact taping of 2025. It's going to be a hell of a time to be a TNA fan. Impact this week, lots happened. We got a lot of matches booked in for Genesis as well. So let's get straight into it. This week's TNA, though, started with a six-man tag. Now, if you remember last week, Macklin, Eric Young, and John Gresham were out the back. They were having a conversation. The system of Brian Myers, Eddie Edwards, and Dirty Dango come out the back. They were kind of ignoring them, and it set up a six-person or six-man tag on Impact, and it kicked off the show. And as it kicked off the show, Eddie Edwards jumps Gresham, and Gresham got a lot of punishment first thing. He finally managed to get the tag out, and then there's a great back and forth six-person tag on this one. Really enjoyable. There was a lot of miscommunication or a little bit of chaos between Macklin and Eric Young, his tag partner. They butted heads for a lot of this match as well, and Gresham was trying to play a peacemaker in that. And once all the chaos wore off and come down, ended up with Macklin being the legal man, and he hits the KIA on Johnny Dango Curtis for the one, the two, the three, and Macklin, Eric Young, and John Gresham picked up the victory. However, that is not how the end of the, or not how the match ends. The system go on an attack with steel chairs, taking out all three men. And then, interestingly, they put a chair around John Gresham's neck and throw him into the ring post. So, solid match to kick off the show. The aftermath of what's happened here, and I think John Gresham with his contract situation. Is he going? Is he staying? What's going on? Was this done to write Gresham off TNA television? Quite simply, we don't know. That it may well have been the case. And if that is, John Gresham's last match in TNA, it's going to be a sad to see him go. But you know what? TNA will be fine. Um, but yeah, it was a system doing that. It is a way of writing somebody off. So they could have done. It may have wrote Gresham off TNA. We'll see though. We will see. Not a guarantee by any sorts of the imagination. Now, so before we get to the next match, we had a story of Joe Hendry, the story of an emerging fan from Scotland with a dream and the dream to where he is now, and it leads to Genesis against Nick Nemeth, which, by the way, you can see on the TNA Plus app, like you can see every episode of Impact, and you can go to the vault and see all classic episodes of Impact and the pay-per-view. So get that downloaded, get subscribed to the TNA Plus app. Savannah Evans was next. She is an absolute wow. She's just a specimen and a half. She was back in TNA for another match, and this week she was taking on Ling Yi. I will get it right at some point. Li Ying Li. Zaya Brookside was on commentary on this one as well, which was interesting, very interesting on this. It was a real sort of David and I don't want to say David and Goliath because it's men; these were women going at it in the ring, and it was the quickness of Li Ying Li and the strength and power of Savannah Evans, and Lee was trying to use the quickness to the combat, the power game in this really good knockouts match, which showed the depth of the knockouts division, and it was it wasn't like massively fast, it wasn't sorry massively long match, sorry, but it was a good match, a solid match on this. And again, different styles worked very well. Two women that can go in the ring. Li Ying Li looking ever impressive. Savannah Evans with the power game, like we said. But however, thunderstruck by Li Ying Li picks up the victory. You know what though? I was thinking about this the other day, and when, well, sorry, not the other day, today when I was watching this. And I was surprised that she wasn't utilized more in the WWE. But with the landscape of the Knockouts division changing in 2025, she could well be somebody that TNA builds the division around. We know potentially who's leaving, which we've talked about it on this channel quite often as well. So the fact that people like Jordan Grace may be leaving, I don't. Masha Slamovich has signed a new contract, so she's going nowhere. But when you look at people like Li Ying Lee on there, and you think, if we want to, shape a division, it's right there for her to shape. And it's right there. The division is right there, pretty much, literally right there for her to shape. So interesting to see where they go with that for sure. But Li Ying Lee, an impressive victory and certainly one to watch in 2025. Jordan Grace and Tessa Blanchard have been on an absolute collision course, fighting everywhere they go. Jordan Grace this week, as Gia Miller was backstage, stormed through the area. She was like, "You want to fight? Let's fight, bitch. Meet me in the ring." Jordan Grace had she had a bee in her bonnet. She was pissed off this week on Impact, and she wanted to fight Tessa Blanchard tonight when she gets into the arena. Very unhappy Jordan Grace, and rightfully so. She's been taken out on two separate occasions by Tessa Blanchard. I can understand her unhappiness, but she wants a fight. And I tell you what, wait until you hear what I say later on between these two. Absolutely crazy stuff going on. Speaking of the TNA Plus app, TNA did show you a match from Genesis in 2009. It was like a from the vault kind of thing, from the TNA Plus moment of the week. And it was a match between Kurt Angle and Jeff Jarrett from Genesis in 2009. The relevance of that is that if you watch other wrestling programming and not just TNA, you will know Jeff Jarrett has signed his final professional wrestling contract with AEW last week. So there was a nice little bit of relevance to what TNA do there, kind of giving Jeff Jarrett a nod as well, but kind of keeping within what's going on in the world of wrestling and utilizing the news to good effect to put it together to show the match with Kurt Angle. I really actually thought that was a nice touch from TNA on this. Do you know what? Next, it was Gauntlet time on TNA. So if you remember last week, um, Santana was not happy with the Northern Armory, who have been a bit of a thorn in his side a little bit. More notably, Josh Alexander, Judas Icarus and Travis Williams, not so much, but they do like a sneak attack and everything else every now and again. So you understand Santana's issues here. And he was going to run the gauntlet. Interestingly enough, on here, Josh Alexander was absolutely nowhere to be seen as this started with Judas Icarus and Santana. And Jesus, Santana made short work of Judas. I think he clotheslined him into February. It was ridiculous. Spin the blocked him into February. In terms of spinning the block, I mean, he may have got a few blocks down the road. He annihilated Judas very early on. I think it was like 90 seconds and the match was done. That part of the gauntlet was done. It was then, of course, off to Travis Williams to get in. And he got an early jump, to be fair, on this. Santana, sorry, got the early jump on this, to be fair. But, there was eventually a little bit of more of a back and forth between these two. And then, do you know what? We're talking like we saw spin the block and he spun Judas into, three blocks down the road. My God, did he power bomb the hell out of Travis Williams? There was a one before that where he picks him up in a power bomb, throws him back. It reminded me a little bit, and it's totally different in terms of like move, but the kind of velocity and everything. You see, if you go back to when Hernandez, I think, boulder tossed Gal Kim into like row eight, when it seemed to be row eight, he boulder tossed her from one side of the ring to the other. It was very similar of that, but it was just more of like a power bomb into a face plant, and Travis just boinks off the mat, and then he finishes that off with a power bomb and a half to pin Travis. Now at that point, It is meant to be Josh Alexander, and Alexander does indeed walk down to the ring at this point, but the Northern Armory sneak attack again, and basically calls a disqualification uh, for uh, for giving Santana the victory, but really not allowing him to get his hands on Josh Alexander. With that being said, the match is indeed official for Genesis. Santana will have the opportunity of getting his hands on Josh Alexander at Genesis in a couple of weeks' time on the TNA Plus app. I'm really looking forward to that. Santana for me is someone who I think I mentioned this. I know I said Leon Slater last week. If he doesn't, if he doesn't win the X Division Championship this year, what are we doing? Santana for me is a shoe-in for a championship this year in TNA. Has to be. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to that match. Should be a great match between those two. And this Gauntlet match was fun. You did kind of get the impression that Santana wasn't gonna get the whole group tonight, and it did go that way eventually. He was gonna get the money match at Genesis, and that's where we're going with it for sure. Looking forward though to seeing that one. Now, George the Iceman has set up next week a pre-launch of a champagne celebration of elegance, already implying that the Elegances are going to win the Knockouts Tag Team Championships at Genesis, which they do get a shot at Spitfire, Danny Luna and Jody Fret this coming, in a couple of weeks' time at Genesis, but a pre-launch of the Genesis, I don't quite get it. But I'm looking forward to seeing it because my personal belief is I really do believe the Elegances will win that match at Genesis for the Knockouts tag titles. I think it is the right time. They've built it right. Ash has been great. Heather's come in, Heather Reckless or Heather by Elegance has come in, and she showed that she can go as well. Really exciting times for those two, and I honestly believe that their time, not to quote a certain wrestler, but their time is now in the Knockouts division for those Knockouts tag team championships. But we will, of course, have to wait and see in a few short weeks' time. But the pre-launch of Champions Celebration by George the Iceman apparently happening next week. Yeah, I can't see that one going very well. Now we head at this point backstage to Rosemary. Now she's talking about Masha Slamovich and the things she wants to do to her. At this point, the camera pans round and Raven, yes, Raven is there. And he's questioning if Rosemary is ready for Masha Slamovich. And that's just something that you just don't do. And he mentioned that Rosemary hasn't had a title in like 7 or 8 years. To which point, Rosemary brings a knife up to Raven's throat. Raven actually looked right unconcerned. He looked quite at home by this. It was just a crazy, crazy scene. But it's a hilarious one. But Raven then said, well, if you're ready for anything, why don't you put her in the Clockwork Orange House of Fun match? To which Rosemary liked that idea. And it is official. Rosemary and Masha Slamovich in the Clockwork Orange House of Fun match for the Knockouts Championship at Genesis. If you know that match, and it's one of Raven's specials, but if you know that match, you know exactly what it's going to be like here. It's gonna be war. It seriously will be war between those two. They're gonna tear each other apart in that. Trust me, that is gonna be. There could be blood and anything in that. They are gonna go at it. Clockwork Orange House of Fun match at Genesis TNA Plus app, by the way, just in case you wasn't sure. The Rascals were next against the Good Hands. The Rascals getting ready to take on the Hardy Boys at Genesis in what is really a dream match, to be quite honest with you. This was a really good tag match as well. I did feel like, though, that with the Rascals, they were kind of doing a lot of what the Hardy Boys, like when you see the Hardy Boys, it's always one of them gets a beating in the hot tag. Normally it's Jeff that takes the punishment, tags out to the hot, Matt makes the hot tag to Matt. Matt does a load of stuff. Then Jeff comes back in, hits the Swanton bomb, and it's off to the races. And thank you very much, and done. That's how it normally is. And in this one, it kind of went the same way. It was Wentz that took the brunt of the punishment. He made the tag to Trey Miguel, and they all come in. And then they did hit their combo, feed them to the Lions, 1, 2, 3. They picked up the victory in a fast-paced, fun tag team match. In many ways, the outcome might not have ever been in doubt because you know that the Rascals are going to face the Hardys in a couple of weeks. You couldn't really have the good hands pick up the victory in that. There is a big twist to that tag team match, and it's happening next week, which we'll get to. It may not be the Rascals versus the Hardys. There may be a third team added to this, and we'll discuss that in a minute. But because of where the Rascals are going to Genesis, it kind of felt like it wasn't in doubt, but it was still a fun, fast-paced tag match. The good hands are exactly what they say on the tin. The Rascals were very much at their best tonight, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens A, next week, and B, at Genesis for the gold. Now, at this point, Rhino is backstage, and he's getting ready to team up with Joe Hendry against the Nemeths. And there's Frankie Kazarian shows up. And Frankie's like, he's going to be watching that main event tonight because if he hits the gore on Nemeth, he might well call his shot in that match. As long as you all know, Frankie Kazarian has the call your shot opportunity for a world title match at any time of his choosing. So him saying to Rhino, "Hey buddy, you go on MF. I may just cash in that opportunity." Rhino didn't look very impressed by that, by the way, just as to a point to add it on that. But yeah, he didn't look very impressed by that. So Kazarian's going to have invested interest in the main event. Macklin and Young are backstage at this point, and Macklin says, the system tried to end Jonathan Gresham's career tonight, and their message has been received loud and clear. And Eric Young basically said it is above the law, and they're going to hand out their own kind of justice, and that this is a declaration of war against the system. However, Top Class decide at this point to come in and make fun of them being upset, and they engage in a heated exchange, which will culminate next weekend when, of course, Young and Macklin take on First Class in a tag team encounter. Should be fun next week. First Class are great. Really look forward to seeing them. In the ring. Again, AJ Francis, brilliant. Casey Navarro, fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that match next week. Should be a good one. You kind of expect Macklin and Young to win it, though, but who knows? Could be wrong. Could be wrong. Out comes TNA X Division Championship Moose. He said that at Genesis, he's going to debut a new version of the X Division Championship that was worthy of him. And with that, Alicia Edwards throws the old title out of the ring. And Moose buries it by saying how ugly the title actually is. And then that brung out former TNA wrestler Andrew Everett. And he hits the ring at this point, and he puts over the importance of the championship and claims that, puts over actually the importance of the championship and the division. And Moose was like, "Yeah, who are you?" That was literally kind of what Moose said. And Daisy just says to him, "Get out of my ring." Everett says that he is an X Division wrestler, and Moose is not. And for that, he got a boot in the face. And an impromptu title shot happened, which of course didn't last very long. Moose eventually destroys him, really, to be quite honest, with the last ride powerbomb. Not a very long match at all. However, Ace Austin was watching the match backstage. Ace Austin's the man that's got the shot at Moose at Genesis, and he was watching on backstage, indeed. And it's going to be interesting with that. But a new championship, a new version of the X Division Championship, will debut at Genesis. Hmm. Interesting. Now, you remember what I said earlier on about how this tag title match between the Hardys and the Rascals could all change come at Genesis, and you're absolutely right because PCO and Sammy Callahan said they feel a bit shafted that the Rascals are getting the shot at the Hardys over them, and Callahan basically said whoever wins as next. But Santino didn't quite agree with that, and he says, "Do you know what, guys? Next week, Sammy Callahan and PCO will face the Hardy Boys." And in a non-title match. But should they win that match, they get added to the title match at Genesis, making it a free team match for the tag team title. So that could all, everything could all change next week in the men's tag team division, which will be absolutely brilliant to watch, guys. Looking forward to that next week. That's two big men against the Hardys. It's going to be interesting to see how that works when they clash next week on TNA. Now, going back to what I said earlier on, if you remember, when I said that Jordan Grace wasn't very happy. She hits the ring. She says if Tessa Blanchard believes the Knockouts division is hers, she's going to have to go through her. And my God, Tessa Blanchard come out. It was absolute chaos. They couldn't get separated. No one could separate them. Every time security got them apart, one would break free, go for the other one. These two are on a massive collision course coming up at Genesis in a few weeks' time. And you know what? It is, I am all here for it. Those two, and you know what? Are going to kick seven bells of shit out of each other come Genesis in a few weeks' time. Cannot wait to see it. It was crazy. It was crazy, 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 crazy times between those two. They don't like each other. It's plain to see. It's like TNA's version of Punk and Rollins. Simple as that, guys. Before we get to the main event, let's run down next week's card on TNA. Laredo Kid against Jake Something. That should be an interesting match. Again, Clash of Styles, Laredo Kid. Quick, agile, Jake Something, big, strong guy. That's gonna be the interesting one. We've already hit on two other matches next week. Young and Macklin waging war against the system, but want to get through first class first. And obviously the Sammy Callahan PCO versus the Hardys match, where if Callahan and PCO win, they get added into the tag team title match at Genesis. And finally, Trent Seven against Leon Slater next week on TNA should be a great match. Seen it over here in the UK, and if it's anything like I've seen them two do in the UK, we're in for a treat next week on TNA. But it is main event time. It is Joe Hendry. It is Rhino with Kaz on commentary. Now, remember what he said. If Rhino was to gore him, interesting. He would cash in. Um, Lots of chaos in this match. There was here, there, and everywhere in this. It didn't end up with the gore. In fact, it was the standing ovation on Ryan Nemeth that gave Joe Hendry and Rhino the victory. Nick Nemeth looked a bit disappointed at his brother, to be quite honest with you on this. They did have a stare down with Joe Hendry to end the show, but it's all going off, ready to get to Genesis in a couple of weeks' time. It's going to be incredible, that pay-per-view. It's going to be a great way to start 2025 for TNA. And don't forget, the next time after Genesis is the live Impact Wrestling taping, going live at least for 1 week only. Going to be an excellent week of wrestling, that, isn't it? You know what? This show, great overall, some fun matches, some good build towards Genesis. Really interesting times for TNA. And on top of that, and just to add, Nick Nemeth has actually agreed a new contract with TNA on top. So Nick Nemeth's contract was actually up in January. It is now re-signed. Don't know how long for yet. That hasn't been announced that I'm aware of anyway. But Nick Nemeth has agreed a new contract with TNA. So what an even better way to go off the air. But get yourself downloaded the TNA Plus app, get it downloaded, get subscribed on that straight away. Get on that. Watch all of TNA. And more importantly, watch this episode next week as we continue to build a Genesis. And who knows, we may get another TNA exclusive interview as Genesis rolls around. Keep your fingers crossed for that and for us. But until then, everybody, buckle down, stay safe, and goodbye.